This is USCHO Weekend Review. And here is your host, Ed Trefsker.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, October 20th, 2025. I'm Ed Trefsker alongside Jim Connolly and Derek Schooley. Well, gentlemen, they talk about the state of hockey, but right now the state of Michigan is college hockey's newest hotbed. Let's start out with number 3, Michigan State. Number 3 last week, number 1 this week after this weekend. They swept number 1 BU on the road 4-2 and 4-3 in overtime. And the winning goal on Saturday ended up on SportsCenter as the top play. Matt Basgall got the goal, picked it off the goal line, went the other way and scored. I guess a little question on that. Some people think it crossed the goal line, but, they got plenty of review and then decided no. But that was a big win. I'll mention the others, then we can just kind of bat it around. Number 4, Michigan, 6-0. Derek, you got an upfront and personal look at the Wolverines. And number 2, Western Michigan. Number 2, Western Michigan swept UMass Lowell on the road 2-1 and 6-0. William Whitelaw, who transferred from Michigan last year and the year before that from Wisconsin, seems to be a big offensive force there. 3 goals on the weekend on 14 shots and 21 attempts. So not only is he scoring, he's trying a lot. But let's look at that. Let's start out with Michigan State. A lot of people were looking at them as number 1 on the season, and now they're number 1 in the poll.
This is the defining weekend of this early season for Michigan State. To go on the road to BU, Friday's a national television game on ESPN2. I mean, that is some of the best exposure, regular season exposure college hockey has gotten on ESPN in quite some time. So to have, Butchergross and Cohen in the building, calling that game and really manhandling BU very well in that game. BU gets back and makes it a 4-2 game. Saturday's game, a lot more competitive. You talked about the end, Ed, but, just the effort going on the road here, the ability to find a way to get those 2 wins in a game is as impressive as it gets.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you touched on it briefly there is the national exposure, and we've been on that already about college hockey, and to have that game on ESPN2 and then to have that as a top play just shows you college hockey is kind of at a height, like a top of the mountain right now, top of people's tongue and tip of the tongue and tip of the iceberg, all of that stuff. And I think those are something that's really cool. And to be able to have that and to have a full studio show, hopefully it continues because those games didn't disappoint. And like you said, Michigan State, number 1 in the nation.
Number 4, Michigan, they're among a very few college hockey teams right now that are undefeated, except for a lot of ECAC teams, the Ivies, who haven't started. But some big wins for them. Derek, can you kind of rewind the weekend? I know you guys battled pretty well, and you had some opportunities to be close. In fact, you led a couple of times over the weekend. What did you see from Michigan? And maybe we could be a little self-serving and let us hear what you found out about your team too.
You know what? I'm not going to pump our tires too much because obviously we got swept. But I will tell you this: they hadn't trailed yet. We had a 1-0 lead on Thursday, and then again 2-1, 2-2 going in the third, 2-2 with 10 minutes left. They got a bounce off of a skate. They made some plays, and then they got an empty net goal with a minute left. So really back and forth game, really tight checking. Our guys defended really hard. They had they made plays. They've got some really high end offensive explosive talent, and they did an outstanding job. They've got one thing they have this year that they've got a high end goalie. Their goalie was outstanding. And you talk about all the scoring, and I know we're going to talk about scoring and the 6.67 goals a game that they have. And yes, for all the kids out there and all the people that listen, yes, I said 6-7. But with all of that out there, right now they got goaltending as well, and they were outstanding. And going into the next night on Friday, we couldn't have played a better 18 minutes. We outshot them. We had a 1-0 lead, and then their power play took it to us. They had a whole bunch of really good chances. They scored a power play goal with about 3 minutes left, and then a shorty, which really we came in the locker room and felt we couldn't have played any better, and we're trailing. Just shows you their explosiveness. We made it 3-2. They took a 3-1 lead. We made it 3-2 with about 8 to go in the second. And the kiss of death for us in the last 26 minutes of that game was 4-on-4 hockey. They scored 3 goals, 4-on-4. They got added 2 more power play goals, and their transition and their 4-on-4 play was off the charts. And we didn't have an answer for it. And it went from 3-2 with 6 minutes left to 6-2, just like that. And then we tried to open it up, and that was a bad decision by our players. And we should have just played tight D and lose 6-2. And unfortunately, I once again got away from it because they've got some really good offensive talent. TJ Hughes got his 50th goal of his career. Good goaltending again, really deep, 4 lines deep. That's what you're going to see from Michigan. And our team, I was proud of our guys. We if we can compete that hard and battle that hard, we're going to win a lot of hockey games. Although the score on Friday doesn't indicate it. We played pretty good for about half the game, and we just didn't limit them enough. And 10-2 is not the right score of that game. It's probably more like I always look at the in-stat, and they give expected goals. That expected goals was 6.5 to 3.5.
Well, I'll tell you, you're not going to be the only coach that walks out of a weekend this season after playing Michigan lamenting the fact that you gave up a few goals. This team can score. And I always use some context because my first year in college hockey was 1992. And that main team with Paul Carrier and Jimmy Montgomery and the Ferraro brothers, Cal Ingraham, they averaged just under 6 goals a game for their entire season. So when I see a team ever get over that at any point in the season, I know we're 6 games in a small sample size, but for any team to be able to put that type of offense up, so impressive. So that's when you then tell me, Derek, that you think that they have really good goaltending. We're now getting to the point that you're saying Michigan, it might be the team that is looking as complete. They can score at will. I'm not going to go that far, but they can score. Their offense is a juggernaut, and they can stop the puck. We haven't been able to say that about Michigan, as many good teams as they've had in recent years. So I think this is really a scary looking Michigan team.
We're spending a little bit of time on it because I saw them in person from the bench. But I will tell you this, they've given up 3 goals. Going into the weekend, it was 26-3. And I felt really good when we got to 2. I was like, oh, okay, we got to 2 on Thursday. So I felt good about that. And then we got to 2 again. And I was like, okay, we walked out there scoring 4 goals. But I think that's one thing with their goaltending. They've got all the pieces. They've got from the back out, their goaltender played in the World Juniors. Their goaltender is a high draft pick. They've got pieces on the blue line. They've got younger players up front, but they've also got the older players as well. And once again, they're deep and explosive, and it'll be fun to see Thursday night, Western Michigan at Yost. Mark that on your calendar. Pretty good game as we move forward in the state of Michigan.
And speaking of Western Michigan, a sweep of UMass Lowell on the road, 2-1, which is kind of what I would expect to see with those two teams, especially a Lowell team, and then 6-0 William Whitelaw with 3 goals on the weekend. What do we see in Western Michigan? It's really hard to come back after winning a national championship the next season.
Yeah, I got to see that series up close as I call both of those games on ESPN Plus. And I got to tell you, we're talking a lot about Michigan State, rightfully so. The defending national champs are darn good again. They have plenty of scoring touch. Lowell did a good job. Their goaltender, Austin Elliott, had a fantastic game on Friday night to hold them at 2. On Saturday, the offense got clicking. And then when you go to the back end, their defense was really solid, blocking a ton of shots, taking away the passing lanes. and then excellent goaltending again. So they again have this real total package. And now that you've won a national championship and you have all that experience in the room, yes, you've lost a player like Alex Bump. You have a player like you mentioned, William Whitelaw. He's taking up some of the slack. I mean, the jobs that these forwards are doing, you don't feel like there's that much of a letdown in terms of the offense. So I think this Western Michigan team pretty complete as well.
Well, you also just said it. I mean, you go on the road, you lose to Ferris in the banner raising ceremony, and then you wonder what kind of hangover you're going to have. You lose Bump, and you wonder if they're going to have a little bit of a rough go to start. And it's not an easy trip going to Lowell. They're not used to going east. They're used to going west. And to go east and play a different style team, it's hard sometimes. And going to different buildings that you're not used to going to, and to go and beat Lowell 2-1 and 6-0. That's a quality weekend for Western. And now to have to turn around really quickly and play the University of Michigan on Thursday and then Friday at Lawson. That from Ann Arbor to Kalamazoo trip is going to get a lot of miles on I-94.
You mentioned too that opening game on banner raising night. Talking to Pat Firstweiler last week, he did not feel his team played poorly. He didn't feel like it was a hangover. He felt like he got goalie, and he really did. 50 shots on goal in that game, only 2 to show for it. That was a great goaltending performance. You have to shoot your opponent 50-18 and end up on the wrong side. But I think, another thing he mentioned this week when we were talking with him, I think it's a really good sign. You don't know what first-time champions, what they'll do. But he said that the players asked before the season to take the trophies away from last year, get them away from the locker room. They said that's the past. They want to move forward. I thought that was a pretty mature statement that those leaders made on his.
There's some other significant results from the weekend. Augustana swept Arizona State, then number 15, now unranked. 3 straight wins to improve to 3-1-1, and in Monday's poll, Augustana was the highest team receiving votes not in the poll, but a great start for them.
I will admit I was surprised the first night when I saw the result, and I was probably more surprised when I saw the result on the second night. I have high hopes for Arizona State after the season they had last year, and they've made some good upgrades, I thought. So to see Augustana come out and play that well at home, that's a nice advantage. But those are quality games, quality wins early in the season, and this is a young program playing it. Get their time in the CCHA, see what they're going to do in there now this season. We'll go from there. But I think that's a real positive step. Maybe a little bit of concern for ASU right now. I'll defer on that one because I think that Greg Powers is a good coach that gets a lot out of his players. So it's early in the season, but maybe have a little concern.
Surprised on Augustana, yes. Shocked on Arizona State at 2-4. I would have never thought they'd be 2-4. That's where I'm more the results are the results, but the records are what I'm surprised on at 2-4. With Arizona State, if you'd say 4-2, yeah, okay, 3-3,
yeah,
but 2-4, they're better than that, and they will be better.
And they will have a nice stretch through the NCHC to really battle against some newly acquired from last season rivals.
Interesting, the Miami weekend. This is going to be an interesting weekend for them coming up here. That's their next games. That's going to be an interesting battle because Miami's been pretty good moving forward. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Yes, indeed. Quinnipiac got a tie and a win against number 7 Maine at home. Quinnipiac scoring 8 of the last 9 goals in the series after they fell behind 3-0 on Friday. Those were the first 2 games for the Bobcats as they open up, which is sort of like an NHL schedule, 6 games in 12 days.
I'll tell you, I was really, wanting to pound my chest early on Friday night, thinking back to last Wednesday's podcast and touting Maine the way I did. I'd say, I nailed it. That was so good. Then I see it, it was 4-2. Suddenly the score was, they were in the lead. And then I get home, see that it was a 4-4 tie. Quinnipiac won the shootout and then get a 4-0 win the next night. I liked this Quinnipiac team when I saw them opening night at Boston College. There's no reason to doubt them at this point. And falling behind 3-0 at home, that's a good building to come back in, but that's a great comeback. That is a fantastic comeback for the Bobcats.
I got Friday circled on my to watch game. Obviously, I've got to watch my game, but I'm going to look at the score. Quinnipiac, Merrimack. Merrimack has been really good since they lost to Lowell 4-0. Obviously, exhibition against Sacred Heart, but to beat Lowell 4-1 and then New Hampshire 5-1, they've only given up 2 goals in their last 2 games. Quinnipiac on Friday night. Then they've got LIU, Merrimack does on Saturday. I think that there's some really neat, sneaky games this weekend, and Quinnipiac, Merrimack on Friday is going to be a really good one.
Minnesota Duluth, as long as we're talking about sneaky, they're off to a 5-1-0 start. Swept home and home with Bemidji State, also swept Alaska to start the season and split with Augustana. It's been a down couple 3 seasons for Minnesota Duluth, so this is a great start for them.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk with Scott Sandel just a little bit before the season. And he liked his team, and I guess every coach says that the day before the season starts. But there's good reason, and a lot of miles. You went up to Alaska, you're back. You had that series with Augustana where you got the split, and maybe at that point I was saying, maybe a little overthinking of Minnesota Duluth. But then we realized, we just talked about Augustana. They're a pretty good team. We're knowing that a win over Augustana was a good win. So 5-1, get into league play. We'll see where it goes. But this is a good start for Scotty's team. This is a Duluth team that I know he has too much pride, and that city has too much pride in their team. They want to see them back competing on the national stage.
Yeah, you talk about sneaky, and Augustana is better than what we thought. To sweep Bemidji. Who would have thought if you would have looked at the Minnesota Duluth series that's upcoming, that one team's 5-1 and the other team's 2-3-1. Pick which team is 2-3-1. Pick which team's 5-1. The Gophers or the Bulldogs. And right now the Bulldogs are the 5-1 team and the Gophers are 2-3-1. Do the Bulldogs continue, or do the Gophers right the ship? That's the big question coming out of a old rivalry weekend in the state of hockey. If we're saying the Michigan is, do they get it back here? That'll be fun to watch too. There's a lot of neat little storylines and games coming up here.
Honorable mention before we go to break, both for Canisius and Union. The Griffs 5-2-0. They've won non-conference games against ECAC foes St. Lawrence, Clarkson, and Colgate. And by the way, Atlantic Hockey's 5-5-1 against ECAC and 3-0-1 right now versus the CCHA. And, they're going to probably be on the deficit with Hockey East, NCHC, and Big Ten. But looking at that league and how it compares to ECAC and CCHA may help out when it's coming up to NCAA postseason time. But some big wins for Trevor Large over there in Buffalo. And Union 4-0-1. They swept Niagara, and they are in a gorgeous new building. We're going to talk about buildings in our Wednesday podcast, but they've got a brand new facility. They moved out of their venerable on-campus one, and Josh Hauge's got them off to a good start.
I think the one thing that's really there is the tale that the transfer goalies in both those programs. Chase Clark at Canisius and Cameron Corpy at Union. I think those are those guys are driving the bus for those teams right now. Both got a lot of miles, got a lot of history in their college game, and here they are leading their new teams to great starts. And honorable mention to them, but New York is making a case as well for a state of hockey. It's I don't know if you went on a theme this week, Jimmy, of pairs of going from state to state, but here's 2 New York teams that are doing pretty well and led by 2 pretty good goalies so far.
Certainly not intentional, as the show script was being written. It has worked out that way. We haven't even seen Cornell play a game yet, so That's another thing to think about with the state of New York. Listen, I think the points you made there, I think one of the biggest factors here is Atlantic hockey, and that the non-conference mark is improving. That's a big note to make for this league, because we talk about it at this time of year every single season. And every single season, we'll have 1 week where we say, oh, it was a great week for Atlantic hockey. And the next 3 weeks, we're like, okay, well, throw that away. This right now, we're starting to see some sustainability in some of these non-conference games. Derek even mentioned how tight they stay against Michigan. You get the great win for RIT this weekend against Clarkson in front of 10,000 plus in downtown Rochester. I mean, those wins, Bentley gave everything they had to UMass on Saturday night, took a very good UMass team on the road into overtime before falling. So I'm really impressed with some of the steps that Atlantic hockey teams have made.
And you mentioned Chase Clark. He could help out Canisius a lot this year. Certainly the well-traveled goaltender, starting with Quinnipiac, then Sacred Heart, then AIC, and then that program folds, and then playing near his hometown in Buffalo in front of the fans. So good to see him having a good start and getting a good place to settle for his senior year. But we're going to take a break right now and come back and talk about scoring. It seems to be the case at the beginning of every season, but there are a lot of goals being scored in college hockey, and we'll touch on that when USCHO Weekend Review continues.
I'm Cole Caulfield, and I played college hockey.
I'm Adam Fox, and I played college hockey.
I'm Jake Gensel, and I played college hockey.
I'm Kel McCarr, and I played college hockey.
Whether you are a fan or a player, nothing compares to college hockey.
We're back with USCHO Weekend Review. We kind of ask this question at the beginning of every season. It seems like scoring is up at the beginning of the season. There are a number of reasons why. Non-conference games, trying out goalies, still trying to figure out freshmen and so forth. But 10 teams, close to 1/6 of the current total at 15.8%, averaging 4 goals a game or more. Michigan at a whopping 6.67, which is pretty incredible. Miami, 19 goals in 4 games. Penn State, 27 goals in 6 games. And North Dakota, 17 goals in 4 games. This usually changes when things get into conference play and you get out of the early season. And sometimes it's got to do with mismatches in non-conference matchups, but we've also had a lot of top-tier teams taking each other on. Is this going to change when we get into conference play, and why does it change? And I guess, why are we seeing this right now?
I think it changes because of familiarity with coaches. And I think guys don't change a lot. They do. Everybody tweaks something that they see over the summer or hear from another coach or things like that. But you got your personality. You got the way you play. You don't deviate a lot from your style. And I think a lot of coaches know what your style is. So I think I just think everybody's familiar with everybody. And I think there's a lot more video that's in the mix by the time you play in conference. And I think there's just a lot more information out there by the time conference comes. So yes, I think it will drop tremendously by the time we get conference play.
I also sometimes wonder how much, and I'm not one that beats up on officials. I really respect the officials. Everybody knows that has followed me for years. But I wonder how much officiating early on in the season affects it. Every game that I have seen thus far has had a lot of power plays. And I feel like the refs call things extremely tight early in the season. You get a ton of power plays. You get a ton of power play goals because of that. And then as you get into league plays, teams figure out how games are going to be called in their league. That helps. So you reduce some power plays there. But you also end up with the games getting called less tight. I feel like referees ease off a little bit, and the points of emphasis aren't looked at as much. So I do wonder how much special teams plays into it. I didn't go through and look at number of power plays, in the month of October over the last 3 seasons versus the number in, say, February. But I bet you'd find out that there's more in the beginning of the season than there are at the end. And I think the 2 points I just mentioned, the familiarity with the referees and the referees changing as the year goes on, I think both of those have a little to do with it.
I thought you were going to say that because now both teams are from the same conference, the games are called even. I thought that's where you're going to go with it.
I'm not going there.
I have heard people say that.
Ed was thinking it too. Yeah, I just was waiting for Jimmy to come out with it. I certainly am not going to say anything like that.
But I know that this is a trend, and I know when I think back on our Friday podcast, Jim, USCHO Edge, when we talk about over, under in a game, and what's the mantra? Early season, take the over. When you get into the playoffs, and especially the NCAA regionals, take the under.
It always does go that way. And we broke it down actually last week, and we were talking about the number of times the second game in a series goes way over. Derek, you talked about you had 12 games in yours. I called a game where it was 3 goals in the first game, and we had 6 by one team in the second. So you do see that. Even the BU Michigan State series, you ended up with that game going over on Saturday after just 6 goals on Friday night. So it's those trends do seem to fall really true in the beginning of the season, that you do see more goals, certainly. And if you have a tighter game, it's usually the first one. I would almost expect it to go the other way, that the tight game would be the second game because teams are able to see more film, make adjustments from night one. But it seems like it's going the other direction.
Because we're not in game shape yet. We're still figuring out how to play.
Yeah.
And you're tired and you're mentally fatigued, and you got to remember, like, I'm not making excuses. These were our first 2 real games. This was Michigan's. This was their 6th, and we were like, we competed so hard on Friday night. And just think of this on every team. You compete so hard on Friday night, and then Saturday you get fatigued, both physically and mentally. You break down. And if it's happening both teams, more goals are going to be scored, more mistakes are going to be made. So that's why you're going to see more goals on the second night real early. I would almost say, if you're talking your Edge podcast, probably through the end of October for sure.
Well, it's certainly the tendency we've seen season after season. So I guess that's a word to the wise if you decide to do that. But we'll wrap up here. A reminder, we also have a Wednesday edition of this podcast called Upon Further Review, where we touch on another topic. We're going to be talking this week about college hockey's biggest arms race. See if you can guess what it is. We'll see you with that on Wednesday.
Last thing, I'm going to throw out a plug here. I don't have any Robert Morris clothes on this week. If you're in the Delaware area, we have the first edition of the Schoolie Bowl. Robert Morris women versus the Delaware women on Friday and Saturday. My 2 daughters will compete against each other for the first time. So if you're out there, that'll be interesting. I'm not wearing any Robert Morris clothes this week, except when I have to run practice, and I have to. So I'm a neutral father.
You need some Blue Hens swag now, don't you?
I have some, but I won't wear that either.
Okay.
How about we get to that shirt that's half Robert Morris on the left and half
I do
Delaware
still have
on
to
the right.
root with my paycheck a little bit.
We'll wrap up here. For Jim Connolly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefsker, and this has been USCHO Weekend Review.